Welcome to the shadowy side of mythology, where chaos reigns and order trembles. In this video, we're diving deep into the world's darkest deities, the gods of chaos. From Egyptian serpents of destruction to Norse bringers of Ragnarok, these powerful entities don't just break the rules, they are the end of the rules. Prepare to meet the divine forces that challenge creation, stir fear, and embody the raw, untamed forces of the universe. Hit that like button, and let's descend into the abyss together. Chernobog, Slavic mythology. Slavic mythology, like many ancient belief systems, features a pantheon of gods and spirits representing various forces of nature, human emotion, and cosmic balance. One of the more enigmatic and fascinating figures within this mythos is Chernobog, also spelled Chernobog, Chernobog, or Chronobog, whose name translates to Black God. As the embodiment of darkness, misfortune, and chaos, Chernobog has become an enduring symbol of duality in Slavic religious and cultural traditions. Despite limited historical records, the mythology surrounding Chernobog has continued to evolve, influenced by both folklore and modern interpretations. This essay explores Chernobog's origins, attributes, symbolic significance, cultural depictions, and his enduring legacy in popular culture and modern Neopagan practices. Origins and historical sources. The primary historical mention of Chernobog appears in the 12th century chronicle by the German bishop Helmold of Bosa, titled Chronica Slavorum, Chronicle of the Slavs. In his writings, Helmold describes the religious practices of the West Slavic peoples, particularly the Polabian Slavs, who lived in what is now northeastern Germany and parts of Poland. According to Helmold, in their assemblies and drinking rituals, they curse the god called Chernobog, which in their language means the black god. They also praise another god named Bialobog, or the white god. This short passage is the only definitive medieval source that names Chernobog directly. Helmold presents Chernobog as a deity associated with misfortune and bad fate, in contrast to Belobog, white god, who is associated with good fortune. These descriptions suggest a form of dualistic cosmology, similar in nature to concepts found in other religions, such as Zoroastrianism's opposition of Ahura Mazda and Engra Mainyu, or the Christian dichotomy of God and Satan. However, historians debate the reliability of Helmold's account. Some scholars argue that his descriptions may have been influenced by his Christian worldview, projecting a moral dualism onto a more animistic or polytheistic Slavic belief system. Nevertheless, Helmold's chronicle provides the foundational reference for discussions about Chernobog in Slavic mythology. The nature and symbolism of Chernobog. Though historical details are sparse, Chernobog's symbolic nature can be inferred through linguistic, cultural, and mythological analyses. His name, Chern, meaning black, and Bog, meaning God, clearly links him to darkness and negative aspects of life, but his exact domain remains a topic of interpretation. 1. Embodiment of misfortune and evil. Chernobog is often viewed as the personification of bad luck, suffering, and calamity. In Slavic pagan rituals, people may have invoked his name during times of hardship or to explain unexplained tragedies. He may have served as a scapegoat figure, blamed for illness, war, crop failure, or any other misfortunes that befell a community. However, this does not necessarily mean Chernobog was considered evil in a moralistic sense. In many pre-Christian traditions, gods representing destruction or darkness were not inherently malevolent but part of a natural balance. Night complements day, death follows life, and destruction often precedes renewal. 2. Duality with Belobog. Chernobog is commonly linked with Belobog, Belobog, the white god, creating a dualistic structure in Slavic cosmology. Belobog represents light, fortune, and prosperity, and he is sometimes seen as Chernobog's opposite or rival. This duality reflects a broader human tendency to categorize experience into opposing forces, light versus dark, good versus evil, life versus death. In this view, Chernobog and Belobog may not be adversaries in the way Christian theology presents God and the devil, but rather complementary forces within a cyclical worldview. They may even be aspects of a single God, embodying the balance of the cosmos. Cultural interpretations and folklore. Slavic mythology was largely an oral tradition, and much of it was suppressed or assimilated following the Christianization of Slavic regions between the 9th and 13th centuries. As a result, many deities, Chernobog included, did not survive in detailed records. Nevertheless, remnants of the old beliefs persisted in folk tales, rituals, and seasonal festivals, often adapted or Christianized over time. Chernobog's presence in folklore is often indirect. He appears in superstitions about misfortune. Some rural communities may have made offerings or performed rituals to appease spirits associated with bad luck, possibly echoing older practices directed toward Chernobog. Tales of the devil. In Slavic Christianized folklore, the devil often plays a role similar to that of Chernobog, trickster, punisher, and bringer of chaos. Some scholars suggest that the Christian devil absorbed aspects of the pre-Christian black god. Symbolic associations with winter and death. In the agricultural calendar, darker months were often linked with forces like Chernobog, while spring and summer aligned with Belobog-like figures. Interestingly, while Belobog is rarely mentioned in historical sources and may have been a literary invention to provide a foil to Chernobog, the symbolic pairing of light and dark remains a powerful motif in Slavic folklore. Modern interpretations and neopaganism. In the modern era, Chernobog has experienced a revival of interest, particularly among Slavic neopagans, fantasy writers, and pop culture creators. 1. Slavic neopagan movements. Groups seeking to reconstruct or reimagine Slavic paganism often include Chernobog in their pantheons. In these contexts, he may be honored as a necessary force of destruction and change, a symbol of personal shadow, representing inner fears, trauma, or darker emotions that must be acknowledged and integrated, a guardian of natural cycles, such as night, winter, and death, which are not evil but essential. These interpretations emphasize balance rather than morality, seeing Chernobog as part of a sacred cosmic order rather than a demonic figure. 2. Literature and popular culture. Chernobog has captured the imagination of many modern writers and artists. His mysterious nature and ominous associations make him a compelling character in fantasy and horror genres. Neil Gaiman's American Gods features Chernobog as an old Slavic deity living in America. He's depicted as grim, cynical, and still clinging to his ancient powers, wielding a hammer reminiscent of sacrifice rituals. In Disney's Fantasia, 1940, Chernobog appears in the Night on Bald Mountain segment as a colossal winged demon, conjuring spirits and controlling darkness. Though not based on Slavic sources directly, this portrayal cemented Chernobog in the Western pop culture as a terrifying figure. In video games like Smite, Castlevania, and others, Chernobog appears as a dark god or villain, often wielding shadowy powers or representing evil. These portrayals are stylized and fictional but contribute to the growing mythos surrounding Chernobog, reimagining him for new generations. Symbolism and psychological interpretations. Beyond religion or mythology, Chernobog can also be understood through symbolic or psychological lenses. 1. Archetype of the shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow represents the repressed, unconscious parts of the self. Chernobog, as a figure of darkness and misfortune, embodies this archetype. Confronting the shadow, acknowledging and integrating one's darker instincts, is essential for personal growth. In this view, Chernobog's role is not to be feared but understood. He may symbolize hidden truths or personal fears, the chaos that precedes transformation, the inner battles we must fight to achieve wholeness. 2. Death and renewal. Chernobog's association with destruction can also be interpreted as catalyst for renewal. Just as winter clears the land for spring, or fire clears a forest for new growth, Chernobog's symbolic function may be to reset, cleanse, or test. This is echoed in mythologies around the world, where destructive deities play crucial roles in maintaining cosmic balance. Controversies and misconceptions. Because Chernobog is such a shadowy and underdocumented figure, he is vulnerable to misinterpretation, particularly by those unfamiliar with Slavic traditions. Some common misconceptions include equating Chernobog directly with Satan. While he represents misfortune, Chernobog is not a moral antagonist like the Christian devil. He is more akin to a force of nature than a moral judge. Treating him as purely evil, as discussed, Slavic cosmology was not strictly dualistic in a good versus evil sense. Chernobog's darkness was likely seen as necessary, not wicked. Believing in a complete mythology around him, most of what is known about Chernobog is speculative or reconstructed. Modern portrayals often take creative liberties. Despite these issues, Chernobog remains a rich symbol that continues to evolve with the cultures that adopt him. Chernobog, the black god of Slavic mythology, is a mysterious figure whose legend has grown far beyond the few historical lines that mention him. Whether he was truly worshipped or feared by ancient Slavs remains uncertain, but his symbolic weight is undeniable. He represents the darkness within nature, society, and ourselves, the shadow side that challenges, disrupts, and ultimately balances the light. From medieval chronicles to modern fantasy, from Neopagan rites to psychological analysis, Chernobog continues to fascinate. He reminds us that darkness is not merely to be feared but understood, that every light casts a shadow, and every end may herald a beginning. In honoring Chernobog, ancient or modern, we do not glorify misfortune but recognize its place in the rhythm of life. The black god walks in winter's chill, in night's silence, and in the hard lessons that shape us. And through him, we glimpse a more complete understanding of the human experience. Eris, Greek mythology. In the vast pantheon of Greek mythology, where gods personify forces of nature, ideals, or emotions, Eris stands out as a powerful embodiment of strife, chaos, and discord. While many Greek deities are celebrated for their benevolence or worshipped for their strength and wisdom, Eris is feared, avoided, and sometimes misunderstood. Yet, without Eris, the stories of ancient Greece would lack some of their most pivotal moments. Her influence is deeply embedded in myths, wars, and philosophical interpretations of conflict itself. This essay explores Eris's mythological role, her symbolism, and her broader cultural impact, shedding light on how a goddess of discord is central to some of the most defining moments in Greek mythology. 1. Origins and identity. Eris, Rhoiota in ancient Greek, whose name directly translates to strife or discord, is typically portrayed as the daughter of Nyx, night, in Hesiod's Theogony. Nyx, a primordial deity, gave birth to a number of personifications of negative or chaotic forces, like Thanatos, death, Hypnos, sleep, and Moros, doom, without a consort. In this context, Eris is not merely a goddess but a personification of a concept, existing as a force of nature rather than a divine figure with human-like characteristics. Other versions of mythology link Eris as a sister of Ares, the god of war. This association makes thematic sense, as war and strife go hand in hand. While Ares embodies physical violence and bloodlust, Eris represents the social and emotional chaos that leads to conflict, envy, rivalry, resentment, and unrest. Together, they form a dual expression of war's psychological and physical dimensions. 2. The children of Eris. In Hesiod's Theogony, Eris is not just the product of discord, she's also a mother to it. Her children include many allegorical figures. Ponos, hardship. Lethe, forgetfulness. Limos, starvation. Algia, pains. Hismenai, battles. Makai, wars. Phonoi, murders. Androctasiae, manslaughters. Nikeia, quarrels. Sudia, lies. Logoi, disputes. Amphilogi, anarchy. Dysnomia, lawlessness. 8. Ruin. These offspring are not gods or beings with stories of their own but rather ideas and human conditions, emphasizing that Eris is not a single event but an ongoing process of division and unrest. 3. The Apple of Discord and the Trojan War. The most famous myth involving Eris is her pivotal role in triggering the Trojan War. This tale is a cornerstone of Greek mythology and epic poetry, and Eris is at its heart. The wedding of Peleus and Thetis. When the sea nymph Thetis was to marry the mortal Peleus, all gods were invited, except Eris, who was deliberately left out because of her troublesome nature. In retaliation, Eris crashed the wedding feast and threw a golden apple onto the table, inscribed with the words, "To the fairest," Callistiae in Greek. 3 goddesses claimed the apple: Hera, queen of the gods; Athena, goddess of wisdom; and Aphrodite, goddess of love. Unable to resolve the matter themselves, they turned to Paris, prince of Troy, to judge who was most beautiful. Each goddess tried to bribe him. Hera offered political power. Athena offered wisdom and military prowess. Aphrodite offered the love of the most beautiful mortal woman, Helen of Sparta. Paris chose Aphrodite, leading to Helen's abduction, or elopement, which ultimately sparked the Trojan War. This myth shows Eris as the initiator of events that spiral out of control. The apple was small, the inscription vague, but its consequences were monumental. Here, she becomes a catalyst, not through violence but through manipulation of ego and rivalry, a subtle yet devastating kind of chaos. 4. Eris versus Harmonia, duality in Greek thought. Eris represents more than simple mischief, she embodies a cosmic duality. In Greek thought, many forces come with opposites: life and death, love and hate, chaos and order. Eris's counterforce is Harmonia, the goddess of harmony and concord. The tension between these two ideas, discord and harmony, is central to understanding Greek philosophical and religious ideas. The Greeks didn't necessarily demonize Eris. In Hesiod's Works and Days, he distinguishes between two types of Eris. Good Eris, who incites healthy competition and ambition. She pushes people to improve themselves, to strive harder than their peers, and thereby benefits society. Bad Eris, who fosters jealousy, violence, and destructive conflict. This distinction is important. It suggests that not all discord is harmful. Some level of strife is necessary for progress. In modern terms, this could be compared to constructive criticism or the friction of innovation. The ancient Greeks understood that society is shaped as much by challenge as by peace. 5. Worship and cultural representation. Unlike Olympian gods such as Athena or Apollo, Eris did not have temples or formal worship. Her nature made her more of a conceptual figure, respected and feared, but not revered in religious practice. Still, she was present in literature, drama, and art. Her depictions are often shadowy and abstract, sometimes shown as a shadowy woman with wings, or as a looming force in the background of a battle. Because she wasn't meant to be adored, her presence in myth tends to act as the spark of conflict rather than the center of attention. In vase paintings and reliefs, she appears rarely, usually in scenes surrounding the judgment of Paris or chaotic war councils. The visual minimalism surrounding Eris underscores her thematic role. She is felt more than seen. 6. Philosophical and psychological interpretations. Over the centuries, philosophers and thinkers have interpreted Eris as more than a mythological figure. She becomes a symbol of human nature, particularly our tendency toward conflict. Eris in ancient philosophy. As mentioned earlier, Hesiod laid the groundwork for understanding Eris in dual terms. Later thinkers like Heraclitus leaned into this idea, famously stating, "War is the father of all things." Heraclitus viewed strife, Eris, as a fundamental principle of reality, suggesting that oppositions and tensions are what give rise to life and motion. Without Eris, there is no development, no growth, no evolution. Modern psychological lens. In modern psychology and literature, Eris can be interpreted as the inner discord that drives people to act. Jealousy, competition, insecurity, these are all facets of the human psyche that Eris personifies. When left unchecked, these emotions can destroy relationships, nations, and personal peace. But when managed, they can motivate self-improvement and innovation. Eris teaches that chaos and strife are not necessarily evil, they're inevitable and can even be productive if channeled correctly. 7. Eris in popular culture and the Discordian movement. In contemporary times, Eris has been reimagined in various forms, from comic books to satire to religion. Discordianism. In the 20th century, Eris became the central figure of a modern, satirical religion called Discordianism, founded by Greg Hill and Carrie Thornley. Their core text, Principia Discordia, treats Eris as a playful goddess of chaos, embracing randomness, absurdity, and nonconformity. Discordianism blends parody and philosophy, using Eris to critique organized religion and authoritarian systems. The religion doesn't worship Eris in the traditional sense but uses her as a metaphor for creative disorder and a symbol of counterculture. Their motto, All Hail Discordia, is both a joke and a rallying cry against rigid logic and conformity. Eris in film and media. In popular media, Eris has occasionally appeared in TV shows, anime, and movies. Notably, in DreamWorks' animated film Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, 2003, Eris is portrayed as a cunning, shape-shifting goddess voiced by Michelle Pfeiffer. Here, she's both seductive and dangerous, a trickster archetype who toys with mortals for amusement. These portrayals often emphasize her ambiguity. She's not outright evil but represents forces that challenge heroes to confront themselves. 8. Legacy: what Eris teaches us. The myth of Eris endures because it taps into something timeless, conflict as a force of change. Her story reminds us that behind every war, every feud, every personal argument, there often lies something as small and seemingly trivial as a golden apple. But Eris's apple didn't just start a war, it also unveiled the true nature of the gods. It exposed their vanity, their pride, and their susceptibility to manipulation. Similarly, in our lives, conflict often reveals deeper truths about who we are, what we value, and what we're willing to fight for. The ancient Greeks, never shying away from complexity, left room for Eris in their worldview because they knew life was not always orderly, fair, or peaceful. And rather than deny that reality, they gave it a face, a name: Eris. Eris, the Greek goddess of strife and discord, is more than a villainess in myth. She is a personification of one of the most primal forces in both human behavior and cosmic structure. Whether by casting a golden apple or giving birth to the miseries of the world, Eris represents the unpredictable and often uncomfortable truth that conflict drives history. Understanding Eris allows us to better understand ourselves. Her myth speaks not only to ancient Greeks but to anyone who has ever experienced rivalry, envy, or the sudden spark of chaos that changes everything. In a world that often seeks harmony, Eris reminds us that discord, too, has its place. Set, Egyptian mythology. Set, also known as Seth, Sutek, or Setek, is one of the most complex and paradoxical deities in ancient Egyptian mythology. A god associated with chaos, violence, storms, and the desert, Set occupies a dualistic space in Egyptian cosmology, at once a villain and a protector, a necessary force of disorder and a vital guardian of cosmic balance. Over the millennia, Set's image transformed significantly, reflecting Egypt's evolving religious and political landscape. His mythology, relationships with other gods, and cultural representation offer profound insight into how the Egyptians viewed power, nature, conflict, and divine order. Origins and depictions. Set's earliest origins date back to the pre-dynastic period, before 3100 BCE, where he was worshipped in the Upper Egyptian region of Ombos. His name, sometimes rendered as Seth by the Greeks, is believed to mean instigator of confusion or he who dazzles. He was frequently depicted as a composite creature with a long, curved snout, square-tipped ears, and a forked tail, a form now called the Set animal or Shah. This unique creature does not correspond to any known real animal, emphasizing Set's association with the unnatural or the otherworldly. In other representations, Set may appear as a man with the head of this mysterious beast, often wielding a was scepter, a symbol of power and dominion. In some contexts, particularly when he is portrayed more benevolently, Set may be shown in a more human form. Attributes and domains. Set governs several domains, many of which are tied to chaos and disruption. Storms and the desert. Set is the god of the barren, arid deserts that lie beyond the fertile Nile Valley. These areas were seen as dangerous, lawless places, domains of spirits, bandits, and supernatural threats. He was also associated with sandstorms and harsh weather. Violence and chaos. As a god of disorder, Set represents natural and metaphysical chaos. He disrupts the balance symbolized by Ma'at, the concept of truth, harmony, and cosmic order in Egyptian belief. Protection and strength. Despite his destructive associations, Set was also seen as a protector, particularly in military contexts. He was a powerful force against enemies of the gods and the pharaoh. This duality, being both a force of chaos and a necessary defender, underscores one of the central themes in Egyptian mythology, that order and chaos coexist and that even chaos can serve divine purposes. Family and relationships. Set was part of the Heliopolitan Ennead, a group of 9 major gods. According to myth, he was the son of the sky goddess Nut and the earth god Geb. His siblings included Osiris, Isis, and Nephthys. Set's complex familial relationships form the basis for some of the most famous myths in Egyptian mythology. Set's consort is sometimes given as Nephthys, his sister, though other goddesses such as Anat and Astarte, foreign warrior goddesses introduced during later periods, are also linked to him, especially during his time of worship in the eastern delta. The myth of Osiris and the role of Set. The most significant and well-known myth involving Set is the Osiris myth, one of the foundational stories of ancient Egyptian religion. Murder of Osiris. Osiris, Set's brother, was beloved by the people and ruled Egypt as a just and wise king. Set, driven by jealousy and ambition, plotted his brother's downfall. In one version, Set tricked Osiris into lying in a beautifully crafted coffin, which he then sealed shut and threw into the Nile. In another version, Set kills Osiris and dismembers his body, scattering the pieces across Egypt. Isis, the wife and sister of Osiris, travels the land collecting the body parts, aided by Nephthys and other deities. She eventually reassembles him and, through her magic, temporarily revives Osiris long enough to conceive a child, Horus. Conflict with Horus. Horus, the falcon-headed god, becomes the avenger of his father and challenges Set for the throne of Egypt. This epic conflict, which spans decades in mythological time, features battles, trials, and divine judgment. The Contendings of Horus and Set is a key text describing this power struggle, in which the gods must choose between Set, the elder but violent claimant, and Horus, the rightful heir and symbol of legitimate kingship. Ultimately, Horus prevails and is granted the throne. Set, however, is not destroyed. Depending on the version of the myth, he is either exiled to the desert or incorporated into the divine order as a necessary force, sometimes even tasked with protecting the sun god Ra. Set is the defender of Ra. One of the more positive portrayals of Set involves his role aboard the solar bark, the boat that carries the sun god Ra through the sky during the day and through the underworld at night. Each night, Ra faces the monstrous serpent Apophis, a symbol of utter chaos and non-existence. In this myth, Set acts as the protector of the bark, using his strength to repel Apep and ensure the sun's rebirth each morning. This depiction highlights Set's paradox: although a god of chaos, he is necessary to combat even greater threats to order. Political and religious significance. Set's standing in Egyptian religion varied considerably over time, often depending on the political context. The Hyksos period. During the Second Intermediate Period, circa 1650 to 1550 BCE, Egypt was partly ruled by the Hyksos, a group of Asiatic peoples. The Hyksos associated Set with their own storm god, possibly Baal or Hadad, and promoted his worship. They built temples to Set, especially in the northeastern delta, which became a stronghold of his cult. The Ramesside period. In the New Kingdom, especially under the Ramesside pharaohs, 19th and 20th dynasties, Set regained favor. Ramses I, Seti I, and Ramses II bore names that honored Set, such as Seti, meaning men of Set. Set was seen as a powerful deity capable of defending Egypt's enemies, particularly during campaigns in Asia. Demonization in later periods. By the late period, after 1000 BCE, Set's association with foreigners, disorder, and the desert began to overshadow his protective aspects. As Egypt faced increasing threats from outside powers, Libyans, Nubians, Assyrians, Persians, Set came to symbolize foreign domination and betrayal. He was increasingly demonized, identified with evil and chaos more explicitly. In some texts, Set becomes a precursor to Satan-like figures in later traditions. He was even associated with Apep, his former adversary, merging the identities of two destructive forces. Symbolism and legacy. Set as a symbol of chaos. Set's representation as a god of chaos is not entirely negative. In Egyptian thought, chaos was not evil, it was an essential aspect of the universe that needed to be balanced by order. Set's role, then, was not simply to disrupt but to test and strengthen order. Without Set, there would be no struggle, and therefore no triumph of Ma'at. Dual nature of the divine. Set reflects the Egyptian worldview that the divine encompasses both creative and destructive forces. Gods were not moral in a human sense, they embodied natural and cosmic principles. In this way, Set is akin to deities like Shiva in Hinduism or Loki in Norse mythology, unpredictable, powerful, and necessary. Cultural echoes. Set's legacy can be seen in literature, film, and popular culture. He appears in novels, video games, and movies as a symbol of dark power, often misunderstood or villainized. His conflict with Horus, brother against brother, chaos versus order, resonates with universal themes found in many mythologies. Set remains one of the most enigmatic figures in Egyptian mythology. His image evolved from a storm god and desert deity to a divine murderer and eventually to a necessary protector of cosmic order. His mythology reflects the Egyptians' nuanced understanding of the universe, where chaos is not merely destructive but also integral to the maintenance of harmony. Set's duality, his capacity for both violence and defense, makes him a compelling figure. He is not just a god of destruction but a vital part of a balanced cosmos. Through his mythology, we glimpse a civilization that understood the necessity of struggle, the power of dualism, and the complexities of divine will. Far from being a one-dimensional villain, Set is a testament to the depth of Egyptian theology and the richness of its mythological tradition. And there you have it, the most feared and fascinating gods of chaos from across world mythology. These deities remind us that even in myth, darkness has a role to play. If you enjoyed this journey into the abyss, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss future dives into the unknown. Got a favorite chaos god, or one we missed? Drop it in the comments below, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, stay curious and embrace the chaos.